Let's get to the IMF Article IV mission to Nigeria, which has just been completed. The IMF saying that Nigeria should focus exclusively as priority one on food insecurity. Also saying that fully implemented direct cash transfers need to be made. Also, fuel and electricity subsidies could cost up to 3% of GDP. As a new savings bond, well, actually, before we get to the savings bond, monetary policy tightening is welcome. So speaking of monetary policy tightening, that shows that rates get repriced upwards, and that has been reflected in the latest savings bond from the Debt Management Office of Nigeria. 2-year bond now at the bottom of your screen, 15.097%, 3-year bond, 16.097. Let's bring in Professor Uche Uwaleke, financial economist with the Nasarawa State University at Kefi. Professor, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I guess I wanted to get your thoughts on the, first off, to kick off the IMF Article 4 mission to Nigeria. Anything new, anything worth picking up?
Well, let me start by noting that the Bretton Woods institutions, IMF and the World Bank, have been, partners, reliable partners of Nigeria in her development journey. From time to time, we know that, of course, they've come to give us one form of assistance or the other. Now, but with regard to this advice coming from the IMF, let me even start with the issue of petroleum and electricity subsidies. I think calling for the removal of the implicit, what they call implicit fuel subsidy and electricity subsidies at this time would be, to me, smacks of insensitivity, gross insensitivity to the current difficulties that the ordinary Nigerian, is going through, which the government, acknowledges. So I don't think that is one advice that the president, should be taking. Of course, the IMF has also said the Nigeria stands to GDP growth, stands to come in at 3.2%, but also qualified it, said it's also likely to face headwinds coming from the the aggressive tightening that the central bank has just chosen to adopt, because there's no way you can be tightening, raising MPR by as much as 400 basis points. And if you look at that report, it also says that since May 2022 rather, that the MPR has been raised by as much as over 1,000 basis points. Okay, so the point I'm making is that some of this advice coming from them is not what we should be, adopting at this time, which is why I would suggest that the president should also take this document to maybe another neutral independent body to look at and advise him. That committee doesn't need to be announced or doesn't need to be formal. He can take it to the Nigerian Economic Society, for example, to look at and then give the views on the advice by the IMF. All right. On the issue of food insecurity, of course, that is good, recognizing that it is of great importance. But the approach to address it is also what I disagree, using conditional cash transfer. That hasn't worked, and I'm also doubtful that it's going to work this time.
Professor, you mentioned the monetary policy. I want to get your thoughts on the bill to amend the CBN Act that's currently in the legislature. Will this bill pass?
Of course it will. I am optimistic that it will. You see, the CBN Act of since 1958, we've had amendments. We had 1991, 93. We had also in 97, 98, and then the latest one, 2007. And since then, 16 years now, no amendments. And in view of the changes, that have been experienced within the economy, I think it's time that act, is amended. And if you look at the specifics, what they are talking about, and I think there are also things that will go a long way to strengthen, the central bank, even strengthen the central bank independence, and also ensure that the economy is better coordinated. Look at the issue of coordinating committee, for both fiscal and monetary policy. This wasn't there in the CBN Act of 2007. what you have in that act is a financial sector regulatory coordinating committee, which only deals with the financial sector. But this time around, the bill is seeking to include a coordinating committee where you have 4 ministers, I think finance, budgets, agri, trade, CBN governor, DG Sec. But I think they can also include in that committee, coordinating committee, maybe consider including the DG of the Debt Management Office and also the president of the Nigerian Economic Society, to have an external independent view of government issues. There are other issues that are also of prominence. I think will also help to strengthen the system. One of which is also the ratification of any budgets coming from the central bank by the National Assembly. Is already there, provided for in Section 21 of the Fiscal Responsibility Act. You'll find it there. CBN is listed at number 31 of the government agencies listed in the schedule. NNPC is number 1, CBN is number 31. And I think having a second opinion on the budgets of these organizations will go a long way to ensure transparency and also accountability. That doesn't remove the operational independence of the central bank.
All right. Well said, Professor. We'll be following up as things proceed. Finally, savings bonds rates. I was wanting to get your thoughts because you mentioned MPR, it being a bit harsh that they are hiking rates. But then, Professor, on the other side of it, folks can get more returns. So what do you make of the other side of the coin when you see T-bills, bonds, the latest savings bond rates going up, giving retail investors a chance to earn more money?
Yes, of course, if deposit rates are going up, if bond rates are going up in line with the policy tightening, I think that to me makes a lot of sense. But what we find in Nigeria is most of the time when you have a hike in the MPR rates, we don't usually get a corresponding increase in savings rate. Go and check what is happening. I saw something this morning, a letter by a bank to a customer talking about, repricing of a loan facility that was granted. So you find a situation in which banks jack up rates, by, if you like, in geometric proportion, and then the deposit rates are, if they increase at all, you are increasing them in an arithmetic, projection. So you don't find a corresponding increase also in deposit rates, or even investment or returns from investment. But I think, overall, we cannot continue the idea of jacking up, particularly, treasury bill rates. Look at the last one that was done at 19%, OMO bills at over 20%, and the way it seems now, the central bank will continue to ensure that these treasury bill rates, keep pace with MPR. So if by March they increase MPR again, they're also likely to increase rates at which they're issuing treasury bills. I don't think that is to be healthy for the economy when all that we're encouraging is just for people to come and engage in an unearned income, if you like, encouraging hot money, into the system, as opposed to, productivity, as opposed to encouraging investment. How do you encourage productivity? It is by ensuring that people have access to credit so that they can also invest such in productive activities. Right.
Professor Uche Uwaleke, always a pleasure getting your thoughts on these pressing matters on the Nigerian economy. Thank you so much for joining us. Financial economist there with the Nasarawa State University, KEFI.